Hi guys, Shawn here from Digidirect. So in this installment of Audio for Video, we're going to be talking about handheld audio recorders, so separate devices that record audio. This is in contrast to the last installment when we talked about on-camera solutions. So these are microphones that plug directly into your camera, so the audio is still going directly into the camera and recorded from your camera. That was like the Rode VideoMic Pro or the Rode Link wireless lavalier system. Now, the one that we're going to be talking about today, the handheld audio recorders, this is a separate device that records the audio separately. So this is called a sync sound system. And the reason for that is because you then have to sync your audio in post-production. Because now your camera is getting just the video, not the audio, and your audio is coming from these devices. So you have to sync it up, hence the name. So there's a lot of different things you can get that'll do this, but in the videography world, definitely the most popular brand is Zoom, and they make a range of products, 4 of which we'll talk about today. That's the Zoom H1, the Zoom H4n, the Zoom H5, and the Zoom H6. So hopefully from this video you get, first of all, the differences between the 4 of them, but I also want to try and convey why you might use a separate audio device as opposed to an on-camera solution. It's a bit more advanced than on-camera stuff. Sometimes people get a little bit confused as to why they might want to use an audio recorder. Basically, the larger the scope of your project, the more complicated the audio scenario is, the more likely you'll need an external audio recorder. But hopefully I can answer that question in this video. And in fact, once you start shooting in perhaps an environment with a little bit more of a budget, a little bit more of a professional background, you'll find that sync sound systems is really the way that audio is recorded. You won't really find on-camera solutions when you're in a more professional production environment. Okay, so we'll talk about all of these Zoom products independently, but I just want to give you some overall context of the general differences between them. You'll notice they all have external mics on them, so they can all be standalone recorders and record just with nothing else, although some of them do allow for external mic inputs. So the H1 is the smallest and least expensive of them, but it has the least amount of inputs. The H4n is probably the most popular amongst videographers. It's the first one where we see the addition of Xlr and 1/4-inch jacks, and I'll touch on that in a moment. The H5 is basically a newer version of the H4n, which adds the option to interchange the type of mic on the top, whereas on the H4n you can't change those mics. And then the H6 is the biggest of the units. It has the most inputs, has a slightly nicer screen and monitoring, and it's something that you'll see on more advanced shoots. So the first one we'll look at is the H1. I've got it here, and as I mentioned, this is the smallest of the units, and that's beneficial because it's easily concealable, whether just out of frame, kind of in the frame but behind something, or in the pocket of someone. It's easy to hide and not be very noticeable. It does have the XY mics on top, so it can be a standalone recorder. A lot of people will, if they're doing interviews, they'll put the H1 on a table in between the interview and interviewee, and just use that to get the audio for both. It also does have an input for a 3.5mm microphone jack. Now, the other ones that we'll look at have Xlr inputs, which is the most common type of microphone input, but some smaller microphones, like a lavalier microphone like I'm wearing right now, do have 3.5mm jacks. So that makes the H1 a really good option to give someone a lav mic and just hide the H1 in their pocket. I know a number of people who actually have multiple H1s. When they're shooting a scene with a number of subjects, they'll give them each a mic and they'll slip an H1 in each of their pockets. Then you have all of their dialogues isolated very, very well. So that's how we're going to actually get the audio for the rest of this video. I'm going to be using my lav mic here, plugged into the H1, and I'm going to have the H1 in my pocket. Okay, next up is the H4n, and this is, to be honest, probably the most popular of these Zoom products that we're looking at today. It's the one that I own myself. This is my own H4n, and it's the first one that introduces the combo jacks on the bottom. So like the H1, it does have the XY mics on top. You can use it as a totally standalone recorder. It is a little bit bulkier though, so it's not as good as the H1 for hiding somewhere, for being inconspicuous. I can't really fit this in my pocket. When I shoot these videos normally, I use my H4, I have a little belt clip, and I put my lav mic into the H4, but I have to put it on my belt clip because it's not going to fit in my pocket like the H1 is right now. Okay, but back to the inputs. So this is the first one that gives us 2 combo jack inputs. So these inputs will accept both an XLR cable or a 1/4-inch cable. And if you guys aren't familiar with what those are, XLR is the most common type of cable you'll see associated with microphones. Picture any typical microphone and the cable attached. Probably that's an XLR cable. It's got the 3 prongs on it. Now these jacks are also able to take a 1/4-inch cable, and that's basically like an instrument cable, a guitar patch cable, or an audio cable for a keyboard, for example. So it doesn't have to be just microphones that you can plug into this, and I'll get to that in a sec. But this is the factor that really makes the H4n a lot more versatile than something like the H1. So you can use it like the H1 with the XY mics and so on. It does also have the 3.5mm jack to plug in a lavalier microphone. But there's so many more options that I can use this for now that I have these external inputs. For example, I frequently shoot weddings. When I'm at the reception for the weddings, usually it's in a venue with some kind of sound system. What I'll do then is I'll bring my H4n to the sound guy and I'll take a feed directly from his mixer, from the microphones into the H4n. So then I don't need to worry about getting the audio from my camera and having it sound okay when it's just coming from the speakers. I've got a direct clean feed right from the mic into the mixer and into my H4n. I just leave that running for the whole ceremony or reception, and I've got good clean audio the whole time. The reason why that's good, in addition to it being higher quality than if I had just used a Rode VideoMic Pro, for example, is that when I'm shooting these things, I'm often moving around. So if I just use the audio from the Rode VideoMic Pro on top of my camera, sometimes I'm closer to the speaker, sometimes I'm further away. You're going to get an inconsistent audio sound. So having that plugged right in gives you just a much higher quality of audio. Sometimes it's a smaller venue and the PA system doesn't have an output for me to plug into. In that case, I'll often put the H4n on a little tripod and point the mics directly at the speaker, just about, less than a foot away from the speaker. That'll still give me pretty good audio quality. Not quite as good as if I was able to plug in, but again, I can still move my camera around independently and not worry about that affecting the audio. Then I just sync it up in post. So I mentioned earlier that you don't just have to plug mics in here, you can also plug in instruments. For example, here I'll show you a clip of a little video I shot in Hyde Park in Sydney. This is of a singer-songwriter performing outdoors, and it was just a quick live music video. Now, I didn't just want to use an external mic like my Rode VideoMic Pro because that wouldn't pick up the sound very well, especially in a big park. There's lots of other noises going on. So what I did is she was just playing piano and just singing. So I gave her a traditional dynamic microphone to sing into, and she had her keyboard. I plugged the dynamic mic into input 1, and I plugged the keyboard into input 2. Then I had really nice isolated audio for that. So just take a quick look at that.
I'm gonna swing from the chandelier, and I'm holding on for dear life. Won't look down, won't open my eyes.
So you can see how that's much better audio quality than if I had just pointed an external mic like a Rode VideoMic Pro at her and tried to pick up the keyboard and her vocals, and it wouldn't be very well balanced and so on. You can also use it in live music venues. I've shot some bands, so full-fledged band with drums, guitar, bass, vocals, multiple vocals. Obviously too many inputs for me to fit just here, but again, I take a feed from the mixing board from the sound guy, and I get a stereo feed of the mix directly in here, which if I tried to use the on-camera microphone or a Rode VideoMic Pro on top, for example, it would be all distorted and wouldn't sound great, for example.
I don't want you thinking you could have been someone else, someone better than yourself.
So that opened up a lot of different possibilities, having those external mics. So one last example I'll illustrate where the external mic inputs are useful is if you're on a production that has a dedicated sound person who's using a boom pole. They've got a shotgun microphone on the top of the boom pole, and what they can do is just wear the H4n on their belt, have the XLR cable come down the pole and plug directly in here. Then they're entirely mobile. Wherever they go, they've got the recorder on their hip. They don't need to worry about being tethered to the camera and so on. So a lot of different situations where that's very useful. can be very, very useful in a lot of different situations. And both the H5 and the H6 that we'll look at next also have these inputs. Okay, so now we're looking at the H5. This is actually very, very similar to the H4n. The H4n has been out for quite a number of years. The H5 is basically a newer version of it that's come out in the last year or two. And really, functionally, it's very, very similar. You've got the two combo jacks on the bottom, again, as we saw on the H4n. We've got a bit of a change in how the record level is adjusted. You've got these nice dials on the H5. On the H4n, it's a little switch on the side. But the main difference between the H5 and the H4n is the mic capsule. So the standard mic capsule that comes with it, the H5 is very similar to the H4n's, but it's removable. So you can get different capsules from Zoom and make a shotgun capsule, a mid-side capsule, and one that's not a microphone in itself, but it basically gives you two more combo jack inputs. So you can switch those out on the H5, whereas on the H4n, it's the hardwired XY mic and that's it. So that's the main difference between these two. Okay, and so now we're looking at the H6, which is basically the bigger brother of all of these units. Again, functional point is very, very similar. Main difference is that we have 4 combo jack inputs on the H6 as opposed to 2 on the H5 and the H4n. So again, just bigger scope, more input options. You'll see this on something where you have a more complicated audio setup, basically. Again, we've got the dials that we see on the H5. We've got a bit of a nicer LCD screen to read audio levels and so on. And then we've got the interchangeable mic system. So this one actually comes with 2 mic capsules. It has an XY capsule, and it also has what's called a mid-side capsule. So I can interchange them here. And this has just got a slightly different pickup pattern to the XY. You can also get, like I mentioned, a shotgun capsule or a capsule that gives you an additional 2 combo jacks. So on the H6, you could have up to 6 external mic inputs. So again, if you've got a lot of mics set up, that might be what you're looking for. So hopefully now you understand the differences between the different Zoom products. My main goal for this video though was really to try and explain the concept of why you might want an external audio recorder in general. So regardless of which one of those 4 that we talked about appeals to you, hopefully now you have an understanding of why an audio recorder in general might be good in a certain situation where an on-camera microphone might not be good, and vice versa. I myself have a Rode VideoMic Pro on-camera shotgun microphone, and I have a Zoom H4n. So in some situations, I'm using the VideoMic Pro and I'm not using the H4n. In other situations, I'm using the H4n and not the VideoMic Pro. Sometimes I'm using both. So it really depends on your situation. So it's really important to understand what scenarios are good for on-camera microphones, what scenarios are good for audio recorders. So hopefully you have an understanding of that. Like I said in the last video though, every shooting scenario is going to be different. So my recommendation is to come into one of our stores, talk to some of our sales staff, and describe to them exactly what kind of video you're looking to shoot, what resources you have available, and so on. Then they can help you work out what audio product or combination of audio products will be best for you to cover what you need to shoot. We've got stores in the Sydney CBD, Bondi Junction, Miranda, Melbourne CBD, and Brisbane CBD. And you can also get any of these products on our website at www.digidirect.com.au. Take care.